Welcome back to Country Family Forest Homestead. Now in this episode, we're going to be talking about what it takes to heat a yurt. It's not as straightforward as you think. And we'll be installing this $99 diesel heater. So let's go. All right. Well, first of all, thanks for joining me again, guys. Welcome back for another episode. We're going to be talking about what it takes to heat a yurt. And, well, it hasn't been as easy as we thought it was going to be. And we've come up with several different methods, and we'll talk about those. But at the end of the day, we're going to be installing this $99 diesel heater. And you'd be impressed at how well it works. Well, let me give you a closer look. Now, in case you didn't know, we had an ice storm a few weeks back. If you haven't seen that video, you got to check it out. We survived that ice storm. We were out of power for about 10 days, and we have different methods of heating our house. But just before the ice storm, I decided to give this diesel heater a try and purchased it, and I am so glad that I did. During the ice storm, we ended up installing this. I just did it quickly here, just temporarily through the window like this, and it worked so good. The first night, I had it on high, and it heated us out of the house. It was probably 23 or 24 degrees that night, and we had to open all the windows. It was too hot. Since then, I learned just to run it on low for our bedroom, which isn't that big, and it does great. It barely uses any diesel. It just sips on it, maybe a half a gallon in 24 hours on low. Not too sure, but as we use this more, we'll figure out the consumption that it does have. Now, they do sell these heaters in different configurations, meaning like this one is an all-in-one unit. So there's the heater, the gas tank, and all the controls and everything in this metal box. You could also buy this diesel heater in an exploded version, having the heater, the fuel tank, and the electronics all kind of separate. And it's so compact that way you can install it underneath a seat in a vehicle or an RV, maybe up under a dash. But with the setup that we've got, we're installing it like this on the outside and just ducting the hot air in. It seems to work good, and I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this, and we're going to install this in our yurt. Now, we do heat our yurt mainly from a wood stove, but that uses a lot of wood over the whole winter, and it's pretty cumbersome to have to get up and build fires on a regular basis, keep it going. There's nothing better than wood heat though, so we would do that regardless. But on the coldest of nights and during storms and what have you, or even if we're not able to utilize the wood stove, it's good to have alternative ways of heating the yurt. Especially when you live off grid, it's kind of redundancies. You got to have backups for backups and different options of heating the yurt. Like I said, we mainly use the wood stove, but we also use propane heat. Heater Buddy and other propane heaters. We also have electric heaters, which don't do as good as heating, and they run the electric bill up really high. You can't really run them too long off of the generators, as it just consumes the fuel down, and it's just not practical to run electric heaters when you live off grid. So we wanted to add to that a diesel heater. And now that I've seen how well it works, I'm excited to install it in the yurt and see how well it does in there. Now, as far as the yurt goes, it's a huge space with a high ceiling. And when you go to heat a room like that, it takes a long time to heat it up. All that heat goes way up to the ceiling. We do plan on installing a ceiling fan. They have a kit that you can buy with the yurt. It's kind of expensive, so I plan on making my own version, utilizing their plans probably, and coming up with my own design. But it takes a long time to heat that space. And the insulation that comes with the yurt is a foiled bubble wrap, which probably works good when it's new, but our yurt is probably 20 plus years old, and it's been set up and tore down and stored and set up and tore down several times over. And when we set it up the last time, that foil bubble wrap looked kind of compressed and the bubbles looked flat. I don't know how well that is actually doing for insulation anymore. You could add rigid insulation, but it'd be pretty tricky because it's going to take a lot of custom cutting. There's going to be lots of scrap. That's kind of expensive, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to hold the insulation into those rafters and what have you. So we're going to install this diesel heater into the yurt and see how well that works. So let me go show you where I plan on installing this and how we're going to do that. All right, here we are right outside the yurt, right up front. This is about where our living space is. We have our TV in our living room right here. And our yurt is built up off the ground on these piers. And we've got all the space under here. We use it for storage and what have you. And my plan is to install that heater right underneath here. It'd keep it out of the weather, and we could just run that ducting up to the floor. I do plan on drilling a hole through the rigid insulation and then through that 1 1/8 inch subfloor and running that ducting into the yurt. Now they do supply a small piece of ducting with the heater, but I purchased an insulated piece that's a little bit longer in length, so we shouldn't have any issues installing it under here. Now you do have to access the top of that unit to be able to fill the gas tank with diesel. So my plan is to install it on this little rolling cart that I got from Harbor Freight, and that way I could tuck it underneath the yurt here. It'll stay safe out of the weather, and then when I need to gas up, I could just roll it right out, gas it up, service it, and then tuck it back underneath. So hopefully that all lines up good. There's space enough for all that, and it all works out. So I guess what I'm doing next is gonna go over there and disassemble that and show you all the components. You know, there's a little bit of assembly when you buy one of these heaters. So I'll go ahead and show you that, and then we'll get busy installing it under the yurt. All right, I got that unit out here, and look, it sits right on that cart just perfect. I'll be able to mount it front and back, and it gives us some space to run that exhaust underneath. So that should work out pretty good, and we got plenty of space to roll it underneath, and that should work out good. Now it does come with all the hardware and brackets you'll need. You could hard mount that exhaust pipe with some existing straps. And you know, this is that ducting that came with it, but I got the longer insulated that we're gonna run, as well as I bought a 3-inch hole saw, so we should be able to run the ducting right through the floor once we cut a hole through there. Now something I forgot to mention earlier is that this thing requires a 12-volt power supply. You know, this thing is designed to mount in a vehicle. Now I did have this hooked up to a deep cycle battery, which is its intended design, but for simplicity of installing it here in the yurt, I did pick up a converter, a 12-volt converter, so that's going to be able to plug right in and then be able to power this. If we do have a power outage, I could just run the battery over here and hook it up that way. And I do plan on installing one of these in my shop. I will hook it up to the deep cycle battery and have a small trickle charger connected to that. So that'll be the way we install that one. But this one, we're just going to use this 12-volt converter. And I could probably hard mount that up to the bottom of the yurt under here and keep it out of the weather. So the next thing, I guess, is to probably mount it on this rolling cart and then hook up this 1-inch exhaust and get that all squared away. And once we get that done, I'll locate exactly where I want to put that hole up through the floor into the living space. You know, it does come with this little directional vent, so this will pop up through the floor in the living room. Well, with that, it'll be installed. All right, I got it installed on this rolling cart. I just used some supplied self-tappers they sent with it. Now, something I didn't point out yet either is, well, I already installed the combustion chamber intake. This is the fresh air intake for the actual heater. And then there's an exhaust, which we'll install that next. Here's the 12-volt supply connections. And this is the intake to the fresh air intake. And then the hot air will come right out here. Now, this is where you could run that ducting, and which we're going to be doing into the house. And then, of course, the control panel right here, which we'll go into that a little bit later. But let's complete this install by installing this exhaust pipe and this little muffler that they supply. Now, you could buy longer exhaust pipes, which I've actually purchased one for the other install. But this one is going to work perfect for this little setup we have here. It should hover right above the ground as we roll this thing around. I could attach it to the bottom of this rolling cart, giving it space, so it's not touching the wood, of course, but it'll still hold it off the ground. And if anything, I could also wrap some metal around this wood, give it like a little heat shield. But let's continue. Okay, I kind of got it tipped on its side here so you can see what I'm doing. I just installed this exhaust pipe here, and you can see down underneath how this is oriented. You know, the exhaust pipe comes out here, and this is that intake, and then the fuel line. But yeah, I just installed it there, put a curve in it, use these brackets, which were installed, and just so you know, none of them fit right, but you know, we made it work. And there's enough gap there that should be fine. You know, I could always run some like a header tape or some metal to make like a heat shield or something, but that should work, and we'll just keep on continuing with this install. And that, you know, keeps it off the ground and off the wood, and as I roll this in and out, that should be fine. And I'll just keep an eye on it the first few runs just to see how that goes, and play it by ear. All right, let's continue. All right, I got it mostly all installed under here. I got it mounted to that rolling cart so we could pull it out and gas it up, and then push it back under there to keep it safe from the weather. I did install that converter, and I just set it right on top here. Ultimately, I could find a better spot for that, but for just the video purpose and for now, I set it up there and got it all wired up. Now we got to install the ducting. You know, one end attaches right here. We do have this little vent will be on the inside of the house, direction the heat wherever we need it to go. But before we start doing that, I need to cut the 3-inch hole through the floor. So I'm gonna locate exactly where I need to do that, and well, start cutting. And I got a 3-inch hole saw that hopefully will cut through that 1 1/8 inch subfloor, and then down through a 3-inch piece of rigid insulation. So well, wish me luck. All right, here we are in the living room, and right down here on the floor is where I'm gonna cut that hole and install that ducting right through right there. I just set this here now, just kind of getting an eyeball of where we're gonna be at. I think that's gonna be our best bet. So let me get out the hole saw. All right, we're ready to cut a hole through the floor right here. Now, I never did move this table or furniture out of the way, so I'm just kind of down here on the floor underneath the table doing this, so it's gonna be a little tricky for me, but man, I guess we're ready to just cut a hole right through the floor now. A little unnerving, but well, no turning back now. Let's go ahead and cut a hole through the floor. Little at a time. It's a little tricky. Being up under here like this is not going to be easy. Try this. Dang it. It keeps catching and throwing me out here. I'm going to keep working at it. All right, we're through. Well, through the floor. Now we got to go through the insulation next. We're through. All right, there it is. I kind of missed it with the camera. It went through pretty good, but the very bottom, the hole saw wasn't quite deep enough, and I had to push through, and it kind of broke through the bottom, so it's not as pretty. But I could always use this to slide back up in there and plug this if I decide not to use the heater. So, but there we are. We got a hole through the floor. Now I could run that ducting and vent down through there, and we'll connect it over to the heater, and we'll be good to go. Well, I'm definitely gonna have to run the vacuum in a sec after we're done. And here's that chunk of subfloor that we cut out. Well, I'll go ahead and save that as well in case we ever need to plug this. And now I can start connecting this vent to the end of this ducting and start feeding this down through there so we can connect it to the heater. All right, I ran into an issue. Now this hole, a 3-inch hole, is perfect for this little vent to fit in, but the ducting itself does not fit through there. It's too big. I might be able to contort it and bend it and push it through there, but it's gonna kind of wreck this. If I had to, I will. But then also, that is connected to the bottom of this vent with this hose clamp, and even if I had the ducting clamped to this, the actual hose clamp itself is actually interfering with the floor, and we wouldn't be able to set this in here. So, as I'm sitting here thinking of how to fix this, I don't want to cut the hole bigger. Well, I don't even know if I have a hole saw bigger. I could feed the ducting up from underneath, but this subfloor is so thick that this is not going to protrude down far enough to even reach the ducting from underneath. I'm trying to figure out what the best solution to this is. What I need to do is see if I can't find one of these that has this part that's about maybe 6 inches long, 4 inches long maybe, something like that, where I could feed this down through and be able to connect the ducting to it from underneath, but far below the subfloor surface, so there's no interference with the hose clamp and what have you. Yeah, so I'm gonna get on Amazon, I guess, and look and see if they sell one of these with the longer flange there. That'd be very helpful. I know they sell all kinds of components and extra doodads for these heaters, so maybe I'll get lucky. Otherwise, I have to rig something to extend this farther down. That would be our best bet. If this flange here was 4 to 6 inches longer and I could feed it down through there, that would give me access to connect this ducting down in there without interfering with the floor, and still be able to seal this up and get this to mount flush to the floor is what I want to do, so I could seal this. All right, I'll get back to you in a little bit with an update. All right, guys, I think I got it. Man, so what I did was I went from underneath and kind of contorted that ducting and forced it up through the bottom, and I was able to scrunch it up and get, you know, a couple inches of it up above the floor here. And then I went back with this piece and forced it into the ducting up here, but I didn't use the hose clamp. It was a pretty tight fit, and I was able to squeeze this flange into the ducting, and then as I recessed it back into the floor and hammered it down, that's such a tight fit with that ducting around that flange in the hole that it all compressed together, and kind of, it's got a pretty tight seal. I could screw this down a little more, and I could also maybe use some spray foam from down underneath into the insulation, and that would hold that ducting in place. So I think that's going to work. No hose clamp, just friction fit, because it's all such a tight fit that it's all going to hold itself together. And well, I still got a mess to clean up here, and we got to connect that ducting to the heater underneath, and then we'll be able to gas it up and turn it on and see how well it works. See these ducting hoses are such a tight fit that it makes a great seal. That's why I didn't really need the hose clamp on that other end through the floor. It all sandwiched itself pretty tight. This one, got it on there now, and tighten up this hose clamp so it doesn't get pulled off here. All right, there we go. Now I just got this ducting loosely ran right now. I could always strap this up, but once again, this is the insulated one, so that will retain the heat in there. Should work pretty good. I'm gonna go plug this converter in, get this thing powered up, and turn it on, and well, we'll see how well it works. All right, power on. And try power on here on the heater. I can hear that fan making noise. I didn't do that before. I'm not sure what that's about. Is there a fan or the fuel pump? I know the fuel pump's a little noisy, but that's usually a slower tick. It sounds like a fan. Maybe a bug climbed in there or something, but we'll give this a sec here and see if it fires up. I know it takes a minute to get going. Turn it up to high. That's all the way up. And there, now you can hear the fuel pump. I saw that you can buy a more quiet aftermarket fuel pump for these. I can hear it firing up. All right, let's go inside and see what it's doing. All right, here we are inside. I can feel it blowing. It's barely warm. Oh, it's already warming up. It's not hot. It's just lukewarm, but you know, just fired up. So we'll give it a moment and we'll check back. All right, guys, it's only been a couple minutes, and that is hot air pumping out of there. So I think it's gonna work out great, guys. Let's go outside and check it one more last time. You know, it does make a little bit of noise under here, but I don't think that'll affect us too much. And you know, there's plenty of different ways this could have been installed, but this seemed to be the best and easiest for me. You know, eventually we'll put some skirting around this yurt, and you won't even see it under here. I'll leave a little access panel here that we can pull it out and gas it up, service it, and then tuck it back under there. Well, there we go, guys. $99, and that's simple to hook up. All right, there we go. Another way to heat our yurt. It was super cheap, super easy to install, and well, it's working great now, and well, I'll keep you guys updated, and we'll figure out what the longevity this is and how it works, you know, months from now. All right, I wanted to chime in here for a moment at the end of the video and give you guys an update. You know, we've been running off that heater off and on for a few days now, and it's doing great. Now, I never did plan on having that as a main source of heat. It's more of a supplementary source of heat. Is that a word? supplementary. Anyway, it's just one of many different ways that we're gonna help heat the yurt. Running it on high, it does do pretty good. It doesn't keep it as warm as we want it to be, but you know, using it with in conjunction the other heaters, it does a great job. And a few things I wanted to point out or mention was that, well, it was making like a ticking noise when we first fired it up there. That went away. It must have been a bug or something that got in the fan, but that did go away. And another thing is, you know, we could have mounted that whole unit inside the yurt and just ran a hole for the exhaust pipe to go out. But the reason I didn't do that is I didn't want to bring diesel in the yurt and be gassing it up, you know, filling the tank inside. So that's why I opted to put it out there like that underneath. You know, it's only semi-permanently installed. We could easily pull it out and move it to another structure or something like that if we need be. And another thing I forgot to mention was that it is controlled by a remote that we have inside the house. We could turn it on or off or up or down from the remote inside. So it makes it super convenient. And another thing I've seen people do is if they don't have enough heat from one of those, they've installed 2 diesel heaters. You know, you can plumb 2 of them together from one fuel tank. And I don't know if you can run them from the same controller or not, but you know, I've seen that as well. So if we needed to someday down the road, we could always add a second one if we wanted. But for now, the one seems to be doing good. And like I mentioned earlier, I will be installing another one of these in the garage, but I'll be doing that on my other channel, Country Boy Gas Garage. So keep a lookout for that video on that channel if you're not already subscribed over there. And also, make sure you subscribe to this channel as well. And you like this video, leave me a comment, and until next time, peace.